the images that you see up here are obviously representative of the project entirely, but also representative of some of my own feelings and ideas and kind of a progression that exists in this project and obviously any project. I guess we'll begin with basically my concept. When analyzing the site, it was very difficult for us at first to understand exactly what was going on. When we first visited the site, a handful of us probably spent 3 or 4 hours just figuring out where we were, where the site was in Skowhegan, what the buildings were, and so on and so forth. Partly that was due to the fact that at this time of year, no one's there. But at the same time, there was a sense of center that I felt was diminished by the fragmentation of the existing buildings. Because all of the existing buildings are basically inward-looking geometrical forms that have their place due to, relative to their context. I mean, if there was a need for a building here, that's where it was placed, and so on and so forth. So there is an organized organization, but getting to the point and analyzing exactly, the center about where they revolve and where that is, I think, is a very essential part of going further and adding buildings to this campus. In that Part G diagram, basically, you'll see the library, this, what I'll call an amphitheater, sculpted into the landscape. The studio spaces, which are dispersed around this space in the woods, the faculty studios and the life studio. And then what I feel is the central part of the campus where all the paths cross are the student facility, which consists of a tower, which is about 65 feet high. Basically just a 12-foot square wood-clad structure that just has a stair you can go up and you can look out within the campus. I would imagine in certain areas you could look, maybe catch a glimpse of the lake, but it's really not high enough to be seen outside of the campus. It doesn't poke up above the trees. And then around that area is the laboratory, basically an open air pavilion, and that they would display their work out of the rain and talk to each other about it. And then the student center was really just where the Coke machine and the fireplace is. And then also in this area is the administration along this spine, which is evident. I'm sure you've seen through all the schemes that this is really, the spine of the campus. The images that you see revolving around this, I guess I can start with the studio space, because in the beginning, when I was thinking about what this studio space should be, we started looking at the campus as a stage, which you can look at just about anything as a stage, but there was something about being there around all these buildings that were empty, and they were just like props or pieces of a stage that weren't being used, and we're waiting for the next group to come into them and create a new scene that would last for weeks. So I felt that there was a definite differentiation between the faculty studios and the existing student studios, so to speak. Not only in that, the students' studios right now are in the open. They're out there with all the activity, and this is really the heart of the campus. This is where people are walking back and forth, going in different directions. So there's a lot of activity around here. And I almost questioned, why would this be an appropriate place for the studios? Because it seemed, as we were walking around the campus, there was so much sculpture in the woods. It was almost like these students really wanted to get away and explore their own feelings and really get into it. And if they wanted to share their ideas, they would come to the center collectively. And there would be what I describe on here as a synergistical activity, where more than one individual comes together, and as a result, can produce something even greater as a result of being with these other minds, which is basically the concept of the school. So at first, I was kind of unsure about placing the student studios in the woods, because the faculty studios were in the woods, and it was like, well, the faculty wants to be a little more private, and so they're removed from the campus. But I now feel that B should stay because I guess there is students who want to be part of all that activity, but at the same time I feel that there's really a need for them to disperse out into the things. And they radiate about this space, which really, the library amphitheater space addresses the students who are there because, as described in the program, the library is supposed to be a place of contemplation, a place where you get away from the activities, so to speak, to pick out a book and really get into some idea. So, like our library here being, within so much activity, there tends to be a lot of traffic and a lot of noise and things that are against these ideas of going to this quiet place to read or to sit by the fireplace. And this faces this kind of a room which exists in here. And this space, which I've shown on the site plan, is just basically taking the existing contours and sculpting them in a way that you could go out on these terracing grass levels and sit and look out to the horizon, which I think everyone can understand that as being something familiar that you do when you look out to these views that exist out in this direction. You see the horizon, and that means something different to everyone, but it's a contemplation of what their meaning is in life and so forth. And that's really explains what's happening in this space, which is discovered essentially over the hill. You really wouldn't see, you would just maybe catch a glimpse of the library from through the campus, but then you would go over the hill or through the woods and you would discover this space and then take part in that. Getting back to it.
At the same time, tell me what that is.
Okay. Basically, the only other aspect, well, the other main aspect is the center of campus. I think by the massing of the buildings and their placement around this spine is really what creates the center of this campus, because the paths exist. So around that, I've placed the administration, the tower, and this collective student center, which addresses the pond. It addresses this main street, but it acts as a space that peels off of the main strip, so to speak. So it's really this area in here that opens up, and these existing trees act as the gateway out, and the existing trees over here act as the gate into the space. Just quickly, the studios exist basically as a universal space where the corners at the will of the students can be eroded so that the space extends outward and into the landscape, but at the same time it can pull these back. There were debates about turning this window into a door so that it be a door that's used a lot, and so that it wouldn't roll us back and forth. But obviously that's sort of mine. This image here goes back to the beginning when I was trying to understand the students at this place. Well, how would they feel about it and what goes on with it? You had no indication other than seeing the stage set. So I analyzed myself graphically through this painting, which represents the theme of this whole project is really the importance of centering and taking your ideas and bringing them in and then giving them out in some way. Essentially that's what this is doing. It's coming to a center, but it's also radiating outward, and it's sort of an imperfect shape. Because obviously you're not perfect, there's different gravity around it, and also kind of bringing about that point is this mistake that exists in this image is reflected, I think, very much of
We have a final presentation where we'll address comments on all the projects. I think your presentation, both verbally and graphically, I think your presentation is very, very skillful. I think some of the things you've done are equally skillful. I think that as your control of composition, I understand why you put alto up. I think you've done it very beautifully, and I think that the entire space you've created within here, again, as we were talking about earlier, the sense of space is also, I think it's very skillful, and you have created a sense of space there, and it creates a much better school of painting and sculpture. So all of this I applaud. I particularly also like the way you, as you described, you come up over the hill and you see the library and you have a very elegant and graceful amphitheater. The concern I have is actually when you then show us the architecture. I think that this library, the way you described it, nestled up as this retreat into the woods, as you come up over the hill, suddenly becomes totally institutionalized and misses the elegance and the very poetic possibilities that you've described. I think this is all very poetic and very elegant. But suddenly you come up over this rise and you see an institution that I think is far too grand and far out of scale and too rigid, and misses the point of much more sensitive and subtle than this thing. And likewise with your studios. I think as a composition, these studios, and I agree, as they're probably the nicest locations. The faculty are going to fight for these spaces. But I think we see much more beautiful studios and more sensitive and quiet studios. So I applaud the entire project is very, very skillful and accomplished. But my concern is when you show us the architecture, particularly the library and the studio spaces, they fall far, far short of the planning, because I think the planning is terrific. And your presentation is very beautiful. But once you've shown us that you have the skill to do this planning, I guess I'm even more disappointed at the banality of the buildings, or they seem totally inappropriate to the planning that you've set up for us.
I also think somehow you don't trust us in a way. Or you maybe didn't trust yourself, that you have to give us four boards really, convincing us that what you've done has validity. And have the plan itself be a minor part, and then,
I'm really fond of that building.
dogma, right? It's like you're trying to convince that it's really good. You thought about it a lot, and you're really conscious and conscientious. And then it's,
Well, I guess what I found with this project was unique in that it's probably the first project for us that encompassed this much property, so to speak. Up till now, we've basically been dealing with single buildings that are either basically in some kind of urban fabric, where you're reading an existing fabric in the city, and you're dealing with, maybe one or four facades at the most. And when you really get in and you rip the building apart, what I found with this project is that I really got in and I ripped the site apart. I really found that this, trying to search for the answers and understand how to bring this campus together, that was so important, and it was
it's like
very
bringing
hard
your research notes but not bringing the paper. Like bringing your research notes but bringing the draft of the outline. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I guess.
If you're showing me how much research you've done, but you do it, how much showing your like a good draft. Or at least a draft that's not. I'm just trying to.
I was trying to capture what the essence of what this place was all about, and we found that in a 4-week project that really have to get to that, and that's what really is the most important, because the understanding of the buildings came into the scale and the simplicity. I would love to take another 6 weeks and develop all of the buildings fully, but
just one minor thing. I've always had she always seemed peculiar to me to put towers in valleys. If they're clock towers, maybe if they serve some function, but put a tower in the valley that has stairs out, is something peculiar. Spending let's say how much could this thing cost? But I mean, to put it in the valley, if you don't put it clear,
well, I guess in this context, the reason.
I understand.
No, I agree with what you're saying, but I mean, the idea wasn't that this was identifying the campus from the perimeter.
No.
Or even not that you do out, something going up to a tower to a view on the top.
Well, I like to tell them that the acreage in the center, because there's absolutely nothing to sit there.
Yeah, but sure, but the flagpole that's actually
One of the things to be heavy is when we started this beautiful green rendering over here, I wish we found a bit of weather that rendering as a weather, because it's crucial to your scheme. Now, perhaps it's 3 o'clock in the morning and your day is but so when I see your photograph there of the model, I'm much more convinced that the way you rendered it as bonds and texture. I don't know, whatever it informed you to keep going with the green. this sense of center.
Yeah, I guess I was just afraid of making it look like a vehicular road, and then to render it would have to be
But it is a vehicular
Yeah,
road.
But
it
it's,
is.
but
It's a minor one, but
it's
you
a very
render
minor
it as a
one.
minor one.
Well, it's not
Yeah,
even
it's
minor,
a-
it's a very important road to the complex.
But
It's the road, it's very important.
There's
Right,
also an
yeah.
art of presentation, you know,
Hmm.
because I bet you spend a lot of time drawing this. But in fact, doesn't inform us many more than this drawing does. It's really the same drawing, it's a little bigger. And it's not much more than the model. You spend a lot of time on the model, much better than the model. Much better. So it seems like we wasted a lot of time on doing those things, but you could have been more thinking about it, how to present this more. And you spend a lot of time gluing things, and, you know, which is, I mean, what I'm trying to say is next time, you know, try and see if you can organize your time better and not duplicate your thoughts, not duplicate what you're trying to say, because this is, you're basically trying to tell us what your thinking is, and the way you do it is to record your thoughts. Well, in recording your thoughts, the same thought 3 different times, it's kind of a waste of time. So.
Well, I appreciate this board right here, by the way. I think all the students should have provided information like this. Granted, I know you haven't done the Corbusian studio, but I think some indication of the thought process that you're having would have helped rather than see the project. So I'm not so sure about these other two, but I think you have 4 very informative boards that do help. I agree this one could be much more. There's something that says when you jump up in scale, you tell us more information.
Right. Right.
And we jumped up considerably in scale. The only 2 things I get more information on is the amphitheater, which, and the library. And the amphitheater, I think, is beautiful. And the library, I wish it stayed small.
Yeah, they wanted 2,000 square feet to, now I already reduced the program. I should have just gone to the program and reduced it down to a very small building, because that's enough square footage for over 30,000 volumes. And, but yeah, I agree.